Business valuation questions are quite hard to get your head around, and they're a really important type of question to make sure you don't rush. It's very important to spend about 20% of the available time, so about 10 minutes, planning your answer. And in that time, if you do nothing else other than read the scenario and understand the detail, then this is time really well spent. But ideally, as well as that, you'll start to see how the requirements link in to the structure of the question. So you will see that Part C is linking in to Exhibit 3, and that will prevent you from going into a discussion of factors to finance a possible cash bid and talking about things that aren't relevant. What's being referred to in Part C is the stuff in Exhibit 3. And again, in Requirement B, we're told to discuss the factors preventing forecast synergies from being achieved, and the forecast synergies are at the top of the screen in the middle bit of Exhibit 2. It's all the stuff that we've got here. That's relating to Part B. So time spent at the beginning of the question, just really getting into the detail, helps you to see links between the scenario and the question requirements. And also you'll be multiplying the technical requirements by 1.95 minutes per mark to plan your time. And one of the things that does here is make it very clear that you need to be spending almost as much time on the discussion areas as you do on your calculations. So in this debrief, we're talking about general technique. You've got the answer in the back of the book. You can look at that yourselves, and obviously you will have done that, and I'd encourage you to look at that detail. Here we're talking about general technique. And if we look at Part A in a bit more detail, in Part A we're doing the numbers, and in Part A, Part 1, we have to estimate a couple of things: the value of the combined company and the extra value arising from the combination. And then in Part B we have to estimate the share of the gain for both parties and also comment, so that will be brief on the results. So we're mainly using the spreadsheet here, and with the spreadsheet, especially with business valuations, it's important that you've got a clear, well-structured spreadsheet that you can follow, and equally importantly that the marker can follow. So what might this look like for a Part 1? So one possible starting point in Part A, Part 1, is to estimate the value of the two companies as they are now. Now Selorne's a listed company, so it has a share price, so that's no problem. Q20, however, we have to figure out how to value. And you've got a number of different valuation techniques, but looking at the details of the question, I think we're going to be going for a cash flow based valuation based on a growth rate of 3%. That's the approach I'm going to take. So my setup is going to be one column for Selorne, one column for Q20, and then one column for combined. Selorne, what's it worth now? Well, we're told in the question 50 million shares, $6.50 share price, multiply those together. For Q20, we have to use the details that we've just been looking at. It's the free cash flow to equity of 7 million, which we think is going to grow by 3%. And then I'm going to discount those by dividing by the required return of 15 less the growth rate of 3. So that's a standard way of valuing a constantly growing cash flow. It's like the dividend valuation model that you're given on your formula sheet. So that gives me a value of 60.1. Add together the market capitalizations, and that's our baseline. And now we can look at the combination and what happens. So what technique to use to value the combined entity? Well, the clue is in the question, and if you've spent long enough immersing yourself in the question before you do the numbers, you will pick this up. So this is going to be a multiple of the free cash flow to equity, and the multiple is 8. So the approach I have to take is to work out the free cash flow to equity for Selorne. It's given for Q20, and there's also some synergy of 5 million. The free cash flow to equity, we're told, currently is a ratio of 8 compared to the market capitalisation, so I can work backwards to get that number. Then I can add up the free cash flows, and then the revised valuation is going to be those free cash flows multiplied by 8. And that's roughly 421, and it gives me roughly 36 million of extra value. And that would be my approach to A Part 1, using the clues in the question to come up with an appropriate valuation method and presenting it clearly in spreadsheet format. And then in A Part 2 we have to estimate the share of the gain between the various parties and to comment on the results. So we're going to pick up the valuation that we've come up with. 421 we had. In fact, it's 420.8 working to one decimal place. And I'm going to work out the split between Selorne and Q20, again a column for each. Selorne has 50 million shares and it's proposing to offer 5 of its shares for every one of Q20's, and Q20 has 2 million shares, so that's 10 in total. So we can take this combined value and use it to create a value per share. And once we've got a value per share, we can say how much the 50 million shares Selorne has are worth and how much the 10 million shares Q20 has are worth. We can compare those back to the current values that we've got from A Part 1 to show how much each party has gained. And this adds up to the 36 million that we had in A Part 1 of extra value. And we can then just play around with that in some very simple ways. We could work out how much that extra value is compared to the current value. So that's an 8% uplift. And it's much higher for Q20. Or we could take that total value of 35 and show the split between Selorne and Q20, which is what the wording of the question does ask us to do. So 25.65 of that 35.68 is 71.9, and the remainder belongs to Q20, and we can make some brief comments as a result. In the rest of the question, which I'm going to look at briefly, the key point is not just to recite everything that you know about synergies and cash bids. What a lot of people did here was to say there are lots of synergies that could be achieved in sales, financing, operational, and so on. That's not what's required here. We have to discuss what might stop the stated synergies from being achieved. So this is meant to be more of a practical discussion. We think we're going to sell more, and there's some indication in the question that Q20 has lost out on major contracts because it's seen as being too small. But it may not win more contracts if it combines with another company that's bigger but in a different business. So it might be the case that because we're in different businesses, we just don't see a big uplift in terms of sales. And in terms of our cost base, well, we're given some clues in the question, and there are lots of things that you could talk about here. We've got different staff skills, so can we use drivers in one bit of the business and vehicles in one bit of the business as well in another? I'm not sure that we can. We've got staff with different skills, and we've got big vehicles and smaller vehicles. There may not be much compatibility here. It might be the case that we can use central support, accounting, admin. That seems less problematic in terms of being an area where forecast synergies are unlikely to be achieved. So the factors that are stopping synergies from being achieved are different business, different skills, different vehicles. Other points can be made too, but a discussion of those areas, I think, would be very easily mopping up the available marks. And when you're discussing the sources of finance, it's not a general discussion of cash versus paper in terms of different ways of financing a bid, because the decision has been made here, or the issue that we're looking at here, is we need to raise finance for a possible cash bid, and how would we do that? And that's a practical discussion of the likelihood of being able to sort out these sources of finance listed in the time frame available, how much they would cost, what impact they have on shareholder control. And it's a practical discussion of those issues that are going to help you to score not only those technical marks, but also to pick up some of these professional marks too. And the professional marks are going to be available for doing the right evaluation and using it to inform discussion, making practical points, for example, about problems with achieving your synergies, and showing skepticism where appropriate, for example, perhaps in some of the techniques that you've used in the valuations.